Welcome back to another Respect Project talk. Today, I am so thrilled and excited. I've been anticipating this talk for many months to introduce you to the Unite movement, the Unite book. Tim Shriver, who's the founder, Tom ROSSHIRT, MEISHA, LERATO, Robinson, and DARIUS BAXTER are also founders of Unite. And the purpose of the Respect Project is to create healing and love and unity. So I can't imagine partnering in a conversation with another organization that is more like-minded and committed to ultimately, creating healing in the world and moving that narrative forward. And by doing so, telling our stories as to, what our human experience is like and how we can, reach out an olive branch to each other by telling the truth about our lives fast and sharing in that human experience. And so, without further ado, I want to talk to you a little bit about what the Unite movement is, Tim Shriver, what the mission ultimately was for you when you first thought of this this dream, this purpose to create this organization. And then I can't wait to get into the book with you guys and how that all came to be.
Well, thanks, Elisabeth. I'll start, but everyone on this call is a contributor. As we like to say, we're all co-founders. And in some ways, our dream is that everyone in the country would consider themselves a co-founder. Because in some ways, what we're trying to do is create a platform, an environment, a team, a sense of spirit, a community of people who see crossing boundaries, according others their own God-given dignity, and unleashing creative energy to solve problems of the whole. We see those pillars as pillars of a different version of us, a new version of us, I dare say almost a new story of our country. But we're not going to get it, at least it's our sense, we're not going to get that new story that so many of us are hungry for unless we first recognize the foundational elements needed. We have to learn that everybody deserves dignity, no exceptions. I know that's painful for people to hear in a time when so many people seem like they don't deserve dignity. But our view is that dignity is a first principle, not an achievement, but a first principle. Our second view is that when we cross barriers, divides, gaps, we learn, we understand, we find ourselves in a whole new territory. And our third principle is that when we get there, we unleash creativity. And that's where new solutions may potentially emerge. So, that's all kind of general theoretical work. MEISHA challenged us a year ago and said, stop talking, let's bring everyone together. That's what produced this book. Darius took it across the country and met with people in cities around the country. I'm sure he'll talk about it. Tom combed through the contributions of thousands of people, really, in some ways, through a lifetime, but more recently on the call, and just found these gems of human wisdom and human compassion and love that, coming from people you don't even expect. You don't expect presidents to move your heart. You don't expect chefs to challenge your vision of social justice. You don't expect actors and actresses to teach you meditation, but there it is. It's all there. It's all there. We are much more beautiful than we dare imagine. Let me stop there. That's my pitch.
No, I love it. Darius, we started with you. Let's get into what uniters are and dividers are and what that sort of foundation is that inspires each of you to have created and co-founded Unite.
Thank you so much, Elisabeth and Tim and Tom as well, just for inviting me to be here today. I feel so excited just to be considered amongst this amazing group. But to answer your question, Elisabeth, I'm a product in more ways than one of the teachings of Tim Shriver, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to come together this Sunday and that we've had an opportunity to all contribute to putting together the book and have an opportunity to share it with the country now. Tim has always led with his heart, and in leading with his heart, God has never steered him wrong. And when we thought about, what was Unite going to become, we went back and forth over a couple of different names for even what would be called. But it really was a simple solution. Division and hatred was being spewed at every single turn, whether you looked at print media, whether you looked at the words that were coming out of the mouths of politicians. And I'm not just talking about Donald Trump here. And we all in our own ways were to blame. And Tim Shriver in his own way stepped up and he said, I believe in something different. And I'm being called in this moment in time to first start with my immediate circle. And I was blessed and I'm blessed to still be a part of that. And he said, what would it look like for us to take this out and spread this message across the country? And as we know, MEISHA, as Tim just highlighted, she challenged us to hold true to that, really, as we entered into the pandemic last year. And now here we are, a little over a year later, or coming up on a year later. And it's just amazing at all the things that have happened. So it's the best way that I can put it, Elisabeth.
I kept thinking as I was reading this today for hours, just thinking about you guys. And Tom had said to me that it's a living, breathing journal. It's an offering from all of these lives to each other. And nobody said no to you guys who'd participated in this. They wanted to be a part of this. I can't think of anything other than this as I'm reading the book, which is All We Need Is Love, Sweet Love. And MEISHA, LERATO, Robinson, your name stands for She Who Lives in Love. And we were talking about how that's applicable and inspiring for you and all that you are and all that you do. And we were talking about the India Ari song, I'm Not My Hair. Remember? And just what that, how that sort of has evolved, to become like, what's your testimony? And yours is all about love. And I love that you're the reason why everybody had to get together and really like fulfill the mission of telling our own stories, right? We were talking about how we don't need to be alike, but we need to listen to each other. We need to hear each other's stories.
Oh yeah. I just, first and foremost, I echo Darius and just saying I'm honored, blessed, and excited to be with all of y'all today. And I go back to what Tim said about this not just being about this team, but about so many other people that we're connected to. So Tim's connection with the Special Olympics movement and what he's learned from the athletes, Darius's connection to the youth in Washington, D.C. and what he's learned through there, Tom's connection through his political work and what he's learned through those worlds, and me as well from my journeys. And so I had the opportunity right before we went into the quarantine where I traveled from Atlanta down to New Orleans, and I just stopped and talked to people. And what I heard and what I felt there was the pain. I heard people's stories, but I heard their triumphs and I heard their joys. And ultimately, it was so beautiful to see how people came through those struggles and came through those challenges, and how they said, though, it was love. It was love, and it was that connection and that power that allowed them to pull through, and then seeing themselves and seeing their connections to other people differently. And that energy was really what, I brought back with me when I came back to DC, to said, I felt the fear bubbling up inside of myself, and I saw the fear in everybody else's side, and we need to connect. We need to come together and help each other through this moment. And so going back to that song, what I've learned through all of this is that the world, and Tim talks about this a lot, the world teaches us to be in fear. And that fear allows us to be dividers. That fear allows us not to connect with the person sitting across from us, or the people that are sitting next to us on buses and when walking down the street, et cetera, because we don't know who they are. We need to be worried about them. But when we sit in love, it allows us to see everybody differently, see past their scars, see past their trauma. And then when we can connect with them heart to heart and soul to soul, we start healing ourselves, but we also help them heal as well. And there's something beautiful about that. And it's a shift and it's some work, but that's what I've learned myself through being part of this Unite community, how to be vulnerable, how to be open, how to share my pain with people. Every Monday we get on a meditation call, and girl, we share, we share, we know a lot about each other, but it's through that that you see and feel this love and this connection that's called, because we truly know each other at our worst and at our best.
There was something in the book, thank you for saying that. I mean, I marked like 1,000 pages, but I will refuse to quote that. I will say what's in my heart that I saw today, which is, we become, healers by telling the truth, and by reflecting back to each other our personal experience. And like you said, talking in this way, whether it's in our personal relationships or in our professional relationships or just the world at large, it's really our only way to healing. This is our only way out, is through, and to share with dignity and self-respect what we've all been through, our own personal narrative, and offering it to each other to say, I didn't go through this for nothing. I didn't go through all of this for nothing in my life. If I've gone through it, I want to give it to you, and I want to invite you into that conversation. So please tell me your truth so I don't feel so alone in this world. But like you said, we don't have to be alike at all. So respect, dignity, tolerance, and all of that comes from us listening to each other. Tom, you were talking a lot about dignity and how important that is to you with the Unite movement. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Your mic.
Thanks for the reminder. I sound better muted sometimes. I wanted to say one thing about MEISHA though. She sees other people at their best because she brings it out of them. But as MEISHA said, we know about each other a little bit. I want to say, of course, she took that trip down south and she talked to people and she said, who do people think that you are and who are you really? Two beautiful questions to put side by side. But one of the things that MEISHA is she told me once, I was talking to her on the phone and she seemed shaken, and it takes a lot to shake her. And she said that someone in her neighborhood nearby within earshot had been killed by gunfire. And she didn't know the person. She found out about the person, and then she gathered a small community the next day, 24 hours later, at the time that the man died, to memorialize him, even though she didn't know him. She gathered people she didn't know by putting up signs and saying, come, let's gather. So when we talk about crossing divides, reaching out, it's really good to have an example that's so striking. So I just want to honor that. Dignity, that was an act of honoring dignity. Dignity for us, when we all came together, we, like so many people want to do something, we know something's wrong and we can feel something's wrong. But we don't know exactly what it is. If we want to be super precise about it, how can we name it? And if we can't name it, how can we fix it? And so we were reading and writing and talking and debating for a long time as we sorted through how can a small little group change a big bad culture? And we all were reading different things. And I remember reading Brene Brown. And in the middle of her book, she says, what you really got to do is you really got to read this book, Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu. So I dropped Brene's book and I start reading Desmond Tutu, Book of Forgiving. And in the middle of the Book of Forgiving, the Archbishop says, what you really ought to do is read this book, Dignity by Donna Hicks. So I read the book, Dignity by Donna Hicks. And she spent 25 years bringing peace to warring parties. And she shares with you the evolution of her thinking. And she was in Cambodia with all these deeply traumatized Khmer women trying to recover. And she began to understand the power of dignity and framing it as dignity, that indignity tears us apart, but dignity can bring us back together. And she said from that moment, dignity became the lens through which she saw everything. And then she told a story about, in the book, she goes to a Latin American country and the president comes in to introduce her to this quarreling mob of civilian and military leaders who cannot get along. And they bring her down to do a communications workshop. And the president says, Donna, can you tell us what you're going to be doing during these 2 days of communications workshop? And she said, Mr. President, I've spent just a little time here, but enough to know that we need more than communications. People's dignity has been badly violated, and we need to discuss that and try to mend that. And the president turned to his aide and said, cancel my appointments for today. I'm staying. And after 2 days of people who wouldn't look at each other. One of the military leaders, the general, comes up to Donna, and first time he would even look her in the eye. And he said, Donna, I want to thank you. You've helped improve the relationships of the people in this room, but I think you've also helped save my marriage. And so that's the magic of dignity, whether it's a marriage, family, community, or country. It's universal. If you treat people with dignity, if you refuse to treat with them with contempt, you can start a moral revolution. So that's why dignity has become for us a word that really captures, and you're saying the same thing with respect. We want to treat everyone with respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. It's an inherent worth that we're born with, that we either honor that dignity and we all prosper, or we deny that dignity and we're going to suffer. So that's why dignity is vital to us as we seek to unite. We think really treating each other with dignity is the starting point for unity.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I had marked that chapter that Donna Hicks said, dignity is our inborn value, our inherent worth, our longing for dignity is the single most powerful human force motivating our behavior, in some cases even stronger than our desire for survival. And I think it's true. We all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we want to have ourselves reflected back to ourselves. And I have to say, Tim, talking to you with the Special Olympics about a month ago, as inspired as I am by the athletes and their resilience and all of that, you actually talked about fear, facing your fears. And I was so amazed at that aspect of the conversation. Marianne Williamson said that we need a return to love and the conversation of love versus fear. And I do really think this song going through my head as I was reading the book all day, all we need is love, sweet love. That's the one thing we need. It goes back to the conversation of dignity. And I do want to talk about facing fear, crossing divides and boundaries that are man-made. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's such a big challenge for us all, Elisabeth, right now, because there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of anger that's very, very legitimate, right? A lot of people are angry for very reasonable and for reasonable reasons and for causes that are outrageous, right? There's a lot of people that have felt and have been humiliated in our culture. And, some of it is in the headline, some of it's not. Some of it's, 200, 300, 400 years old. Some of it's more recent, but there's a lot of it. And it's not all the same, but there's a lot of people angry about it. And I think Donna, as Tom says, Donna shows us that when people have that violation, that sense in which you've been humiliated, and maybe repeatedly, and maybe historically, over and over and over again, it makes you angry. Now, the premise here is, our hope here is that underneath that anger is not just a desire for retaliation, although that's a natural human impulse. I mean, let's be honest, right? Which one of us hasn't felt it? Not just a desire for retaliation, not just a desire to make that other person pay the price of the pain they've caused. Although, again, I think that's natural and maybe sometimes deserved. But there's also within us, even underneath that anger, there's also a hunger simply to end the fear and the hostility. There's also a desire to heal. Yeah. And our view is that our culture today is doing a lousy job of letting that piece of us out and doing a damn good job of reminding us how angry we are. So we're in it's a tough job here, right? This is nuanced work because, people say, well, unite. You're going to have me unite with those people, these outrageous people, these people that are, and then fill in the blank, because this is, to Darius's point, both sides say this. And I'm not saying both sides are the same, but I am saying it's not fair to say to someone, something has happened to you that's humiliated and unjustly oppressed you, and you should just say, oh, I want to unite with that person. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that in addition to the need for justice, in addition to the need for restoration, there's also a need for healing. And we want to give that part of our experience its own proper role in the change. The love piece needs to be in there. Otherwise, you end up getting simply a power game where one group has been humiliated and they finally get their voice, thank God. And what they end up doing mostly is just, I'm sorry to say this because this is the story of human experience generally, they end up just humiliating the group that humiliated them. And that's the cycle we want to avoid. It doesn't mean we want to status quo, but we just want to put the dignity and the love piece back in. Now, just make one quick point on Special Olympics because you bring it up. You know, people don't think of Special Olympics as a social justice or a social change movement, but it is. It is. It's hiding in plain sight that the invitation of the athletes of Special Olympics is so distinctive that we don't even see it. Here's a person standing in front of you, 15 years old with Down syndrome, who for generations would have been treated with the most outrageous oppression. Standing in front of you, ready to meet you, to understand you, and to try to be understood. Now, when we think of that as Desmond Tutu, we think, my God, Nobel Prize, and deservedly so. When we think of that in great historical figures, this is a rare gift. In the Special Olympics movement, it's actually the norm. It's shocking. It's so shocking we don't see it. Wait a minute. Did that person just say, oh yeah, I was institutionalized and I was experimented upon and I was sterilized and I was put behind bars for year after year and century after century, and in some countries I'm killed at birth, and yes, I'm just standing here saying, hi, how are you? I want to meet you and understand you. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. So, you know, this is what gives us the hope that despite all the pain and all the outrage and all the suffering, that still somehow this vector of love, as you put it, can emerge from the anger and the outrage and the pain and somehow bring us to a better resolution of our problems than simply letting anger or outrage be the only means by which we try to change. But this is tough stuff, you know. This is
no, it really is. It can't be simplified. And yet I will say this, talking to the Special Olympics, and making friends with some of those athletes, and I mean that word completely, I had no idea how much I needed them and all that they had learned and been through. I really wanted to get to know them and be a part of that narrative, and it was from a pure place. But what I discovered is by listening to their stories that I had a world of lessons to learn from them. And so that's, again, we go back to dignity and respect and listening and all of that. And what does a unified world look like? And each of us has a very different narrative. Each of us has a very different skin color, gender, background, in every way, shape, and form. But we're not alike. Right. So we will learn to thrive when we learn to respect our differences.
And that's what you see at a good Special Olympics event. I'm sorry to keep coming back to it. People accuse me of
it. I love it too.
But you know, it's a place that's safe for everybody to be themselves. It's not a place where everybody's supposed to be the same. That's ridiculous. It's a no judgment zone where everybody can actually be the unique gift that's them. That's unity. That's unity when you walk into the gym and there's 300 people and they're all being wildly different and free.
MEISHA and I were talking about, MEISHA, remember when we were talking about the melting pot? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that, because that's unity. We don't want to melt and smear ourselves. We want to be individuals, right? You said that, I'm quoting you, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so much bubbling up in me through this conversation.
Go, girl, go.
And you know, I told you already, I was raised in a Baptist church, so I holler back and I get a little happy. So I'm trying to, contain myself a bit. But I think I have to go back, and you mentioned, and I'm gonna get there. Just if I don't, just hold your finger up if I don't get back to the melting pot.
Okay.
But I gotta get there. Just give me. So I think I go back to like why I brought up that song India Arie's "I'm Not My Hair," and this also connects, Tim, to what you said about the Special Olympics movement, and partly what I've learned from being in Unite. The healing that we keep talking about, it starts with me. It starts within. So in order for me to respect other people, in order for me to validate other people's dignity, I have to do it for myself first. That's what's going on here. The pain that we all have, from the trauma, et cetera, that we've experienced, it's exploding on our streets. It's exploding in how we interact with each other. So you said everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to know that they're worthy and that they are enough. And so much of our culture says that you aren't, regardless of who you are. So many ways you have to prove your worth. And so that song, when you talked about it, "I'm Not My Hair," I am not my hair, I am not my skin, I am the soul that lives within, is what the lyrics say. And so the Special Olympics athletes, what I see and what I've learned from them is that grounding in who I am. And when I am grounded firmly in who I am, it's okay. You can throw all that in me, but I know who I am. I know who I am. And so, when I look at, and it's going back to the song, India Arie moved on later on, and she had a song, that came out fairly recently that says, "I am light." That's what healing looks like. Going from just being able to say, I'm not all these things, to being like, I am light, and letting that shine through. And so when you come and you show up with your light, you allow others to shine, quoting Marianne Williamson, right? So I think going back to sort of the melting pot, our culture wants us in the US, we're taught we're a melting pot. We all just need to blend in. We all just need to get along. We all need to do that. But as a person of color, what that also means is you want me to conform to mainstream culture, which, ultimately, is a culture where I am not seen and does not validate my worth. But what does it look like when we can say, I can show up fully as me, as Tim talked about in that Special Olympics experience? I can come and all the things that I am, not because of my race, not because of my my gender, but just because of who I am, my light that was within me. You allow me to shine, and then you shine, and we all shine, and we show up as our individuality and who we uniquely are. And that's what, to your point earlier, harmony looks like. We all sit next to each other in our uniqueness, and we sing a song together, and we each have our unique part to play. That's what I'm hoping, and that's what I've learned from this, about owning who I am and standing strong in that.
Mm-hmm. And then offering it up to others, as a gateway for all of us to heal. When you're one of the strong ones, being a leader within yourself for your own spirit, for your own spiritual life, your own existence. And then you can offer. This book is so much about taking what you've lived through and your narrative and offering it to others as your wisdom to share with them. Tom, what are your thoughts about holding on to pain? Versus what MEISHA's talking about, right? Because ultimately we're just human beings in a flesh suit, trying to get through, trying to do the best we can and connect and feel as much and thrive as much. But we're flawed, and we have to get back to our spirits in that way. But as human beings who have been hurt, have experienced pain and suffering, how do we let go of it?
One of the lines and one of the passages that we love most in the book, and the book is, what's magical about the book to us is the secrets and discoveries of a lifetime are in 600 words. These are often P.D. Jakes. How many books has he written? Eckhart Tolle, how many books? Byron Katie, how many books? And they've distilled it down to 800 words for us in the book. So T.D. Jakes says, pain always leaves a gift. And Tim had this conversation with them, which transported me, but they agreed, no, pain is not itself the gift. Pain leaves a gift. And often it's in a deeper resilience. It can be in a deeper understanding. Elisabeth, when you and I talked, you quoted Ram Dass, I love my pain. When on the 24-hour live stream event, when T.D. Jakes was talking to Oprah, he described the pain of all the people whose bodies were stacked up in a way he never thought he would see in his lifetime, and people who never got to be memorialized when they died. And he started crying for them and he couldn't stop. And he said, I don't run away from that pain. I run into that pain, because that's the kind of pain that makes us human. So in a way, the pain itself is humanizing, but it's also an awakening. Eckhart Tolle also says that awakening comes when chaos breaks into our lives. That we don't grow when things are going well. We like things to be ordered, but disorder is where the opportunity is. So this is partly what the book was for, that people, I mean, you've said yourself, the best gift that I can offer people is my life experience. So when people gather together in the midst of a calamity and share the best of what they know about how to make it through, that's humanity at its most lovable. And so this is, how can we turn this pain to good? Not to try to dim it or diminish it or get past it quite so fast. Richard Rohr, also in our book, many books, and he gives us 1,000 words of his genius, will say, don't try to get past the pain before you learn what it's come to teach you. So that really is a short, likely quite inadequate summary of what the book has to say about pain. But there's a lot of growth in pain, and that's what the gathering and what the book, I think, testify.
So thank you for explaining that. In fact, I'm going to ask you, Darius, to explain a little bit more about what the gathering was and then how the book grew out of that for those that don't know.
Certainly. Like many things that come out of, I'll call it the Unite Lab. It's an idea on a Zoom call in this virtual world. Here, here we were with about guys, I might be a little conservative here, about 4 weeks we had when MEISHA first had the calling coming from a church service to say, hey, you all, I think that we need to gather. To Tim then hearing that and doing what Tim does, and what are they, 100Xing it, where it was supposed to be at first sort of this like call-in line for people to call in and have support through a very difficult time at the beginning of COVID. All of a sudden turned into a 24-hour live streaming event with the hopes of bringing people from all different walks of life from around the world, different types of spiritual leaders, different types of artists. You had actors and celebrities and motivational speakers and children and adults, and there were some animals featured on this event. Like, there were people from all over the world. A baby was delivered. I don't know how we worked that one out. You see,
I mean, life was happening everywhere.
Life was happening.
Life was literally created over the course of this 24 hours. There's a group of Unite babies in India out there that they'll understand this story later down the road. But it just out of nowhere, and in all seriousness, this small seed of hope and of love, and something that was put out there for all of the right reasons, in the sense of, we just want to bring people together. That's always been our premise at Unite. It's not that we want to grow a multinational organization that generates millions of dollars a year, or even to the point of this conversation around, hey, we want to write a book so that it makes it on the top of the New York Times bestseller list and everybody gets famous and rich off of it. It's no, let's operate from a place of love and let God take care of the rest. And here we were, where an event of the magnitude that we scaled, 24 hours, we're talking about live television event, hundreds of participants, dozens and dozens of producers. If we were able to pull this off in 6 months, people would have been impressed. We were able to do it in less than 6 weeks. And when we launched, we're still figuring things out along the way. But by the grace of God, it just started coming together. And more people every single day started saying, I want to participate. I want to participate. Can I invite my friend in? We had to extend, we had to do some virtual things because I can't even make this up. You would think that you can't fill an entire 24-hour time slot, but you can, and we proved it. You know, but it just continued to roll and roll and roll. And by the end of the process, or I'm sorry, during the process, Tim and a group of people that he was collaborating with around us had this very audacious idea of what would it look like for the millions of people that were going to view this event to be able to write the world's most collaborative book. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little confused at the time. It's like, Tim, I don't know exactly how we're gonna pull that one off. It sounds good. And then Tom got on board and they started crafting this idea. And over the course of the 24 hours, it started coming together more and more. And here we are again, coming up on a year. And we saw that it was possible. And this book, as much as it is pieces of paper and ink, this book is an example of what's possible. You know, sort of as this theme that we continue to roll with, this melting pot. You have all of these different ideas and all of these different ways of thinking and ways of living in the world that have come together to really share one message, to say, this is what it can look like when we put all of not just the things that separate us apart, but when we look and we try to find common purpose. And in this case, it was to say, how do we turn our anger into action? And how do we turn our pain into purpose? And that has really been the foundation of what we've been doing here at Unite over the last, at this point, going on 3 years. And it's just very exciting.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about tribalism and how people sort of take pride in separating themselves from each other, right?
It's a terrible time to live in when that becomes sort of the foundation of how we operate and how we live. And there's so many mechanisms that are perpetuating these sort of tribalistic mindset that I thought we were moving away from as a people, right? And what we want to continue to push in the work that we do is that, look, you can have your differences. Please have them. Tim and I, we come from a lot more similar backgrounds, but Tim and I have known each other, I'm dating myself, almost a decade at this point. And it's the differences, it's the things that separate us that actually bring us closer together, because there's a genuine interest. And hey, like, I'm learning something new every time I talk to him. Like, wow, Tom, same way. Even MEISHA, you would think, okay, two sexy brown-skinned people, okay, they must have the exact same experience, but not
Here we go. Here we go. Okay, cut him off now, Elisabeth.
All right, hold on a second. I think MEISHA and I have more in common. I'm going to be honest.
I'm just saying. There's just so much joy. There's so much joy in like just going out into the world. And I'll end on this point. There's not many places that you can be a part of. And I'm actually, this is an ode to just Tim's leadership. There's not many places that you can be a part of where we talk about the time that it took to create the call to unite. But in my case, on 2 separate occasions, on less than a week's notice to say, hey, Tim, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to be able to be on the calls this week. What's going on, Darius? What's the issue? I just need to travel around the country. I just need to go listen to some people. And that is really the spirit that we carry with. Like, the more that you can learn, the better off that it makes you and the better person that you can be for this world. And if we all carry that same mentality, ooh, Lord knows where we're going to end up as a world.
Yes, I'm with you. I am with you. There's a quote, somebody here said, now that the book is out there, what is the next thing to do for Unite? How can the book be best leveraged to promote the ultimate mission?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, we're working hard on this. One thing, Elisabeth, is we really have this underlying commitment to telling a different story, as you're hearing that over and over again, which is why we hope people will not just listen to this story about the book, but maybe buy the book, maybe give the book to someone who is struggling, maybe give the book to someone maybe who you've broken off a relationship with. Maybe there's someone in your life that is in the rearview mirror and who you think is just too difficult, too different to belong. And listening to Tom and MEISHA and Darius, maybe you're inspired to think, well, maybe I can't build a strong relationship with that person, but let me send them the book to remind them that I'm on the journey with them too, even if we're not maybe close anymore. So we hope the book is more than just a flash in the pan kind of thing, but a companion as we look for ways to build a new version of us. And that's what we're focused on. We're focused on media ideas. We're focused on actually doing the work. We've got a collaborative bridge building project on responding to COVID, another one on helping communities and law enforcement agencies work more collaboratively together to actually make significant change. You know, God knows no one needs to say that we need it desperately, urgently. So we're working on that. Where there's a couple of projects where people are bringing to us about building back our democracy. There's parts of our democracy that just don't work. They don't work for Republicans. They don't work for Democrats. They don't work for rich, poor. They don't work for black, white. They don't work for the heartland or the coastland. They just don't work. So there's a new initiative we're starting to incubate to bring people together across divides with dignity to try to come up with creative solutions to some of these systemic problems in our structures. So, you know, the list is endless, and we'd love to get some, you know, some show business stuff going too, some shows that remind people that we can solve these problems, transformational shows, podcasts, and invite people to give us your ideas and share them, not just with us, but with each other. So, you know, we're trying to create this conversation.
I think you guys need to do like what you did, you know, again and again and again. I think you guys need to create those 24-hour moments many times throughout the year. I mean, that's what people need. That's what Darius is talking about, how it became, you know, a snowball effect. You know, everybody was chiming in. And I think that means that that's what people need. That's what they're longing for. Yeah. You know, that's what they're aching for in their bones, is that being connected. So I just want to ask you, MEISHA, because I know we're running out of time and it's Sunday night, and I'm grateful to everybody for getting together to talk about Unite. But MEISHA, what brings you joy in your heart when you think about the future of Unite and the work you want to do for humanity and for yourself? Like you said, it always comes from here, from home first.
Oh, wow. That was, what brings me joy about the work that we've done with Unite is that we got started. And I think, you know, you go back to the snowball that Darius talked about. We've been on this journey for a little over 2 years, and we started, like Darius said, in just being curious and listening and talking. We have traveled all over this country, talking to teenagers, talking to college students.
The world, MEISHA, the
world, Republicans, Democrats, et cetera, and just listening to people. And so we responded with the call to unite. We responded then with the book. And I think what I believe is just like the possibilities now at this point are endless, and where we can go from here. And so we've opened the door, and I think we've only opened it this far. And there's so much more that we can do based on who we are as individuals and who we are as a collective, and how we've come together just truly with our hearts first. And with being centered. I'm gonna throw, Elisabeth, you said earlier the G word, I'm gonna throw it out there. But but our spirituality is also the glue within this group. So what we can do with our spirits, what we can do with our hearts, and what we're doing really about within in love. And so to me, that's what brings me joy, because there's just so much that we can do and so much change that we can bring to our country and to the world.
Right. Well, like, as we said, you know, no matter what, it's actually funny. This book is open to God is love, and everywhere love is, God is, right? And so it just means that we don't have to identify with anything, but we have to acknowledge that spirit is inside of all of us, and that's what we share. And it's interesting because I was going to actually read this quote because it reminds me so much of Scarlett Lewis. When I was thinking about what a call to unite means to me, I started to contemplate what really is the word unite. What does it mean? What is the core of it? And the thought that came to my mind is love. To unite is to love, but where is the love? Where can I find it? And you guys are the love. You are creating something, and albeit new, it is that beautiful center, you know, that is love. And Scarlett Lewis, I think you all know who she is. She's in the last chapter of this book. I hope she's with us tonight. Her son was murdered at the Sandy Hook massacre, and she wrote a book called nurturing, healing, love. And she created a movement called the Choose Love Movement. Yes. And
I
her
got my copy behind me too. Show off.
And that's, you know, it's exactly like that. Like, where is the love? You know, we may not, she says this, I'm butchering it, but she says something to this effect. We cannot control what happens to us in our lives, but we can control how we react to it. And right now, you guys are reacting to a world that is suffering. And that's what Unite means to me. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this family. I mean, there's some, if you guys have questions for us, and you know, we'll be here with you for a couple more minutes. Tom, tell me any of your thoughts about the future for Unite and what your perspective is on where you guys are going to go from here.
This is going to be a good one.
He knows that this is improvised.
Yeah, no.
We can go so many different directions from here. And when we are in a position of honoring each other's dignity, that gives a feeling of unity. And the feeling of unity is what allows us to go forward in a bunch of different directions, to cross divides, to reach out to people. Tim and MEISHA and Darius know this, but one of the things that we've been talking about is a unity beat movement, a unity beat for reporters, because media organizations are covering very well the division in the country, but not much attention gets thrown on the people who are working super hard all the time to overcome the division. And if we can highlight the uniters in our society, who treat people with dignity all the time, who cross divides, who challenge contempt, then we begin to have an alternative, because we're an imitative species. We spent a lot of time looking at the biological anthropologists and the theologians who talk about our tendency to diminish others, to show contempt. And contempt is the prevailing force in our culture now for getting power, political power, economic power. Contempt is used enormously. But if we can show people a uniter, that we begin to show what a divider does, what the tactics are, what the mechanism are, then slowly we can begin to see, first of all, being a divider is unethical. Then if we can create a movement around Unite, we can make contempt backfire, to the point where contempt is not only unethical, but more importantly, in a practical society, becomes ineffective. And then people say, then what? Then people don't want to give up an old way unless there's a new way that clearly works. But if we highlight uniters and we can show that contempt is backfiring while dignity works, we can make a moral movement and a social movement in that direction. So honestly, I think many of us think that if we, again, a small group trying to change a big bad culture, we need to find a place of leverage, a place to intervene. And that would be highlighting the power of dignity and unity and challenging contempt and making contempt backfire. If we can do that in various places, just as a beginning, we can begin a moral revolution where it's a point of honor to treat someone with dignity and a mark of shame to treat them with contempt. That's the revolution that we're looking for culturally.
Yes. Well, I couldn't be more, I mean, drop the mic, Tom. I mean, seriously, I don't know how we say anything further, but I do want to say this. I am very proud to be a uniter, and I'm proud to draw light onto the uniters, and you guys are that. And Maria, your sister, wrote at the end of the book, I hope that in listening to our voices, ultimately, that we all feel less alone and more a part of a whole. And you guys are doing beautiful work, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. So thank you for spending a little bit of time with me on a Sunday night. I know it's late for all of us on the East Coast. But if you guys want to find out anything about Unite, you can follow them on Instagram. You can go to their website and be a part of a movement and be a uniter and not a divider. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Elisabeth. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Until next time for the Respect Project. See you then. Much love, everyone.